You tolerate disrespect because you still believe fairness exists. It doesn't. Every unchecked slight is a test you failed, a boundary you surrendered, a future violation you just authorized. Disrespect isn't personal. It's reconnaissance. When someone disrespects you, they're testing your enforcement threshold. They're mapping what you'll tolerate before you impose cost. If you respond with explanation or appeals to fairness, you've answered their question. You enforce nothing. Disrespect is a probe measuring resistance. The person disrespecting you watches one thing: what happens next. Not what you say, what you do. Your response isn't communication, it's legislation. Tolerating disrespect doesn't make you mature. It signals that your boundaries are decorative, not structural, that violations carry no cost. You've been taught disrespect reveals the other person's character. Wrong. It reveals your enforcement architecture. They already know you won't act. That's why they did it. Respect isn't earned through competence or kindness. It's a function of enforced consequence. The most competent person commands nothing if violating them is free. The kindest person is simply the safest target. Morality without enforcement is just exploitable predictability. Respect flows toward those who make disrespect expensive. Incompetent men with strict boundaries receive more deference than brilliant men with loose ones. People don't respect what you can do. They respect what you will do when tested. The respect illusion survives because it's comforting. It lets you believe good behavior generates good treatment. But your competence didn't protect you. Your reasonableness didn't shield you. Because none of those answer the only question that matters. What happens when someone crosses you? If the answer is nothing, then nothing is what you'll receive. Every act of disrespect comes from one of three profiles. The probe tests through calculated minor violations, a dismissive comment, a subtle interruption. They're measuring your response threshold. If you absorb it, they've mapped your entire perimeter. They want to know, is this target enforced or decorative? The escalator doesn't test, they expand. They take your tolerance as permission for greater violation. Lateness becomes no-shows. Sarcasm becomes contempt. Absent consequences, all boundaries are temporary suggestions. You taught them disrespecting you is cost-free, so they scaled it. The audience player performs disrespect as status theater. They humiliate you publicly to elevate themselves. Your silence is their stage. Without enforcement, you're not a person. You're a prop in their performance. Each archetype tests something different, but all three assume you won't act. Small violations don't stay small. They metastasize. History is littered with empires that tolerated minor boundary erosions until those erosions became structural collapse. Rome didn't fall in a day. It fell in 10,000 unchecked transgressions that compounded into normative decay. The pattern is always identical. What you permit once becomes expected twice. What's expected twice becomes encoded as standard treatment. Watch how this unfolds in relationships, workplaces, hierarchies. A colleague dismisses your input in one meeting. You stay silent, mature, professional. Next meeting, they interrupt you. Then they take credit for your idea. Then they openly contradict you in front of superiors. Each escalation was authorized by your previous tolerance. You didn't just allow disrespect, you trained it. You became the soil in which their contempt grew roots. Machiavelli observed this in princedoms. The ruler who fails to punish the first conspiracy invites the second. Not because people are inherently treacherous, but because humans are pattern recognition machines optimizing for resource extraction. If disrespecting you carries no cost, it becomes the rational strategy. Your tolerance isn't compassion, it's instruction. You're teaching others that you're a consequence-free zone. Every boundary you fail to enforce is a border you've ceded, and territory, once surrendered, is never returned voluntarily. Enforcement is not emotional, it's surgical. When disrespect occurs, you don't react. You impose cost, immediately, proportionally, without explanation. The goal isn't punishment, it's recalibration. You're resetting the cost-benefit analysis in the other person's neural circuitry. You're answering their probe with data. This boundary is enforced. First principle, immediacy. Delayed consequences are invisible consequences. If you wait, you've already lost. The disrespect must be met within the same interaction window. Not tomorrow, not after you've thought about it. Now, a cold reframe, a withdrawn resource, a terminated conversation. The enforcement doesn't need to be loud. It needs to be instant and unambiguous. Second principle, no anger, no justification. Anger signals loss of control. Explanation signals negotiation. Neither belongs in enforcement. You don't defend your boundary, you demonstrate it. "We're done here" is complete. That doesn't happen twice requires no elaboration. Your tone should be ambient temperature, clinical. The emotional vacancy is itself the message. This isn't personal, it's operational. Third principle, escalation calibration. Match severity to violation type. The probe gets a cold boundary statement. The escalator gets a resource withdrawal, access, time, trust, revoked. The audience player gets public correction or immediate exit. Enforce once, clearly, and most will recalibrate. Those who don't have just identified themselves as incompatible with your operational standards. The person you've been cannot survive this knowledge. The reasonable one, the bigger person, the one who absorbs disrespect to keep the peace. That identity was never virtuous. It was just undefended territory pretending to be moral high ground. You kept the peace by sacrificing yourself on the altar of other people's comfort. That version of you dies here. What replaces it is the sovereign, not a tyrant, not a reactor. A sovereign operates from a simple framework. Enforced boundaries are the only honest form of relationship. When you permit violations, you're not being kind, you're being dishonest. You're pretending the boundary doesn't exist while resenting its breach. You're training people to disrespect you, then hating them for learning the lesson you taught. The sovereign ends this performance. Boundaries become visible, enforced, and non-negotiable. Relationships become honest or they become absent. This requires killing the part of you that needs to be liked by people who don't respect you. The part that believes understanding someone's reason for disrespecting you somehow makes it acceptable. It doesn't. Explanation isn't exoneration. The sovereign doesn't care why you violated the boundary, only that you did and what happens next. This isn't cruelty, it's clarity. You're no longer a resource to be managed. You're a sovereign territory with defended borders. People will adjust or they'll exit. Both outcomes are acceptable. You're standing at a bifurcation point. One path returns you to the identity you arrived with. The one who explains, tolerates, absorbs. That person still exists. You can close this and continue operating as exploitable infrastructure in other people's lives. Most choose this path. It's easier, familiar. The other path is irreversible. Once you begin enforcing boundaries with Machiavellian precision, you cannot unknow what tolerance costs you. Relationships will reconfigure or dissolve. People who benefited from your non-enforcement will call you cold, changed. They're correct. You stop subsidizing their disrespect with your dignity. Some will recalibrate, most won't. They'll exit. Let them. This isn't motivation. This is selection. The world divides into those who enforce and those who are enforced upon. Sovereigns and resources. You don't get to be both. If you return to tolerance after seeing this structure, you're not compassionate. You're informed and complicit in your own exploitation. The split happens now. You either become ungovernable or you remain governed. There is no third option. And if you're waiting for permission to enforce your boundaries, you've already answered the question.